Hello and welcome to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg.
I'm Joel.
And you all know Teddy, who is along for the ride again, even though he doesn't understand quite what's happening. We are here to talk about our best nonfiction reads of 2023. I'll have a link to our best fiction reads of 2023 in the description box down below. Teddy is already getting a little sassy. He just had a walk. We thought he'd be tired.
I know, but I've been baking, so my hands have
Oh.
stuff all over them, so he wants to lick them.
Yes. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I am not as much of a nonfiction reader as I am a fiction reader, and I think the same is true for you.
Yeah, I do about 25% to 75% fiction.
Yeah, so I did less. I read, I think, I'll let you do the math. I read 102 books in 2023, and 16% of them were nonfiction. So whatever that amounts to is how many nonfiction books I read.
18%, 15, 16.
Something like that. So that's how many, you can see I read a lot more fiction. So this should be a shorter video, but we read some good nonfiction, and I have a hard time comparing fiction to nonfiction. So to me, it makes sense to separate it out for its own video.
Yep.
So we kind of have a hodgepodge. We didn't do like a strict top 10. I have 8. I think. How many do you have?
I have 6.
Okay,
and
so,
I read more.
And you read more. So we just wanted to had a couple that we really wanted to shout out as really great reads.
Yep.
And there will be affiliate links to bookshop.org for all of these books in the description box down below. If you use those, it supports the three of us. And thank you for that. Otherwise, you can...
independent bookstores.
And independent bookstores. Or you can just support an independent bookstore of your own, which is totally fine. Or go to your local library. That is also fine, and we love and support that. So, do you want me to go first since I have...
Sure.
8?
Yep,
go
for it.
So spoiler alert, this is going to be like the Cy Montgomery Appreciation Hour. Because my number 8 is The Hummingbird's Gift by Cy Montgomery. I think he might want down.
Yeah. You want to go down.
Let me put him down.
All right.
And it's an excerpt from a different book about birds, just a section about hummingbirds, and it's really beautiful. I had read a short book by Cy Montgomery before that I thought was less successful. It was The Hawk's Way.
Hawk's Way.
Yeah. And I think part of that is that it felt like the book was just getting started and then it ended. The Hummingbird's Way has an arc. It has a purpose. She works with someone to rehabilitate 2 orphaned baby hummingbirds who are like the size of bumblebees when she first meets them, and help raise them to the point where they are able to be released into the wild. So there's a beginning, there's an end, and even though it's really short, it's like a 2-hour audiobook. It's really beautiful, and in perfect Cy Montgomery style, it is empathetic and beautiful and informative and just a lovely, heartwarming read.
Yeah.
So,
and she does all her own narration, so which is really kind of cool.
I think in some of her early audiobooks she doesn't.
Oh, really?
I think if you listen to the audio of like The Good Pig, it's not her, but she eventually started reading her own, and she's fantastic at it. She's really good.
All that I've read has been her. So
yeah.
Also The Hummingbird's Gift is my number 6, so I'm going to go.
Oh, so look at that.
So
we match. And it's adorable, right?
It is really good.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's pretty informative, which I really enjoy. And when she describes having to feed them with a syringe and a needle, that just a fraction of a movement could penetrate their skull.
Yeah.
So it's really incredible how she describes and how nerve-wracking it is. But once they're fed, it's rewarding.
Yeah, they're very delicate. And I think she said that they also they can't use a needle because the needle is too thick. So they had to replace it with something like a catheter something like that. Yeah, very delicate birds. Yeah. Easily harmed, especially as babies. So that was my number 8, and your number 6.
My number 6.
Yeah. So my number 7 was The Talk by Darren Bell, which is a graphic memoir. Really great, very informative. Basically, it is about Darren Bell growing up with interracial parents. His mother is white, his father is black, and his mother is the one who actually tries to have the talk with him and teach him about how he needs to be careful because police officers or people in general will be suspicious of him, and he needs to be careful. And so he grows up and realizes she's right, and it's about the microaggressions and aggressions that he experiences as a black man in this country. And then the coda to the book, like the bookends, are that he has to have the talk with his own son. So it's a really great book. It is a very urgent, important book, and I would say kind of essential reading. I really enjoyed it. So that was my number 7.
Yeah, you told me about it while you were reading it, and it sounded really interesting.
I basically read the book out loud to Joel. So that was my number 7, and now we're into the 6. And do you want me to go again since you already
go for it.
did your 6? All right. So my number 6 was The Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders, and The Origin of the FBI by David Graham. I had really intentionally timed it to the release of the film adaptation, and then we ended up not seeing the film adaptation in theaters. We're hoping to catch up to it on streaming. But anyway, it's a good book. It is interesting. So it's in 3 parts. The first part is about the murders of Osage people in Oklahoma. Basically, they had been removed from their traditional land, given sort of like a reservation, and the way it was given to them made it very specific that the land couldn't be sold away from them, so it could only be inherited. And then, of course, not of course, but oil is found on the land. So members of the Osage become incredibly wealthy, and people, white people, are trying to figure out how to get that wealth. And Osage people start mysteriously dying in great numbers. So the first part is about the crimes. The second part is a little bit about the investigation and the origin of the FBI. And then the third section of the book is David Graham's own research for the book and how he actually found that what the FBI discovered was actually only the tip of the iceberg. It was kind of a lot worse than what it had originally seemed. So great book, very important. And it'll be interesting to see the movie and how they handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my number 6. We're done with me. What about you?
Number 5, How to Be a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery. Cy does a book that is basically a memoir for her, and it's how she learned to be a good person from different creatures. It starts off with her dog when she was a little girl, goes into some birds, and it's all these animals that she's worked with have taught her something.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting read when we read it going to Helena one day.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating book. We were really going to buy it because we were loving it so much. And right as we were reaching for it, an employee grabbed it, showed the customer. It's like, here's the book. And
we actually helped them hand sell it in the end.
And then I said it's a really great book. We're reading it now. But I would rather her buy it than me because I know I'll get it, but we had to sell it to her, and it was pretty awesome.
Especially since they were looking for gift ideas, so it was a perfect gift idea for them.
Great book, again narrated by Cy Montgomery, and just really heartfelt. So
even when it was talking about Iggy spiders,
I know I love spiders.
I don't.
What do you have?
So my number 5 was actually How to Be a Good Creature by Cy Montgomery.
Look at us.
Look at us. So that was really perfectly timed and basically everything he said. Really great book. Short, again, what was it? Maybe 2 hours on audio?
An hour and a half over and about an hour back. So about 2.5 to 3.
Yeah. So again, another short book, another one narrated by her, and really goes to show all of her skills as a writer. And I loved it. I thought it was really great. So let's go to number 4. What do you have?
Number 4, Of Time of Turtles by Cy Montgomery. This, Of Time of Turtles, Mending of the World, Shell by Shattered Shell. It's in the title. I should have known, but she goes and works at a turtle sanctuary where they heal turtles that have been hurt, damaged, ran over.
Yeah.
And it's in the title. I knew it's coming, and I'm reading the book. It's like, wow, this is really, really dark. And because they don't give up on a turtle. They don't let any turtle die. They just really dive in and try to help the turtles. And it was really enlightening on anatomy of a turtle, the love they have for the turtles. The turtles are really quite intelligent.
Yeah. And so a lot of turtles get run over in the book. Like they're constantly getting called in, and those parts are a little traumatic, but it also makes me wonder, how often does this happen in Boston? Because it seems like it's happening a lot. But turtles have an ability to repair their bodies beyond what humans can do and beyond what most people would expect of a turtle. Like they have turtles that have had brain injuries, who have had spinal fractures, and veterinarians actually said there's nothing we can do for this turtle, but they took them because their motto is never give up on a turtle, and they have had success. But of course there are also turtles that they lose, so it can be a little sad, but it's also beautiful.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
there's two women who actually run the sanctuary and do all this. It's fascinating how they just really teach themselves and learn and try to really become more advanced in what they do. They go to veterinarians, and veterinarian says, euthanize it. And they go, no, we're not going to. Yeah. And they get it. So, beautiful book. Little twist in there about the people who run the sanctuary. Oh. And it's a beautiful part of the book.
Yeah. So. Yeah, very beautiful. And again, just shows off all of Cy Montgomery's skills as a writer.
Yes.
So,
great book. I highly recommend pretty much almost anything from Cy Montgomery. Yeah. She's amazing.
Yeah. So my number 4 was Ducks, 2 Years in the Oil Sands by Kate Beaton, another graphic memoir. And really beautiful. One of my complaints about graphic memoirs, although I love reading them, is that a lot of the time it seems like they're too concerned about not adding a large page count, so it skims over the surface and it starts to feel a little superficial. It doesn't really want to dive into the topic, and it's a little worried about taking time to create a tone, and Ducks really does it correctly. There are pages where there's not a lot of dialogue. It's just setting a tone in the mood about the difficult things that Kate Beaton had gone through. Essentially, she grew up in a poor region of Canada where a lot of people, for economic purposes, would go to the oil sands in Alberta once they graduated from high school so they could make money, get their lives started, and then they'd usually come back home when they were ready to start a family. So she does that, but it's really difficult for a woman. It's difficult for anyone, but it's particularly difficult for a woman because there's a lot of sexism. So she goes and she experiences a lot of difficult and traumatic things, and it's such a good, well-done memoir. It dives into all of these difficult topics, and it doesn't leave you feeling that it didn't only skim the surface. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's probably the best example of a graphic memoir I can think of other than Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, which is one of my favorite books of all time, and Persepolis, both volumes by Marjane Satrapi. So it's a great book. I would recommend it. So what do you have for number 3?
Well, I'm going to do a little preface on number 3, my favorite book. One of the books I've grown up reading is Endurance, the Shackleton Voyage by Alfred Lansing. One of my favorite books on human compassion, a little Arctic journey, and will to survive, and just one of my favorite books. So Shackleton's ship gets stranded in ice in 1915 while doing an Arctic voyage, and they have to abandon the ship. The ship gets crushed by the ice and sinks, and the men have to kind of fend on their own after that. They spend 2 years on the ice, and it's a magnificent story. So that being said, the book I found this year that I loved is Ship Beneath the Ice by Minson Bound. And it is a book on a 2019 journey to go find the Shackleton ship Endurance that sank beneath the ice. And they tried, and the Arctic journey failed, so they had to do it again in 2020. And with the pandemic in 2020, they had a lot of challenges of doing this, but they found the boat, and they have new equipment and new technology to get below the ice, to send rovers down there to get photographs. It's a really fun book if you really like Endurance. Really quite beautiful of how he explains everything. So to navigate, you have to, and they navigated the way they did in 2015, of looking at where the sun is to the horizon.
2015 or 1915?
1915. Sorry, okay. 1915. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries.
And so he measures the book that way at the end of every chapter. Oh, February 11th.
His birthday.
Yeah. It ends the chapter with noon position, 68 degrees, 38 hours, 838 seconds, and then 52 degrees and 25 hours, 19. So basically where they're at every day. The book is really fascinating, and I'm trying to find the pictures of the pictures, because the big pictures are absolutely beautiful.
The book is put together really beautifully.
The book is incredible because they actually got some really great photo footage, and I'll try to put it up here so you can see, but basically of how the ship cold water and wood is a preservative, so most of the ship is still intact and preserved really well. They were looking for the bell that's on there, but during the ice storms, they brought the bell in, so it's not on the deck as it should be. And they were thinking that would be a nice memorial for a museum, but they said no. This is going to be preserved. They left it exactly the way they found it and took nothing from it.
Wow.
Really fascinating.
Yeah.
The book's dry, but the information it brings is really fascinating.
And really beautiful end papers,
yes.
too. I just had to show that
Yeah,
off.
that's a great one.
And, yeah, just great photos. Another beautifully put together book.
Yeah.
So.
Fun book if you like a little historical knowledge. And if you really like this book, I think you would enjoy this.
Yeah. All right. So my number 3, I actually have 2 copies of it. 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. So I read this from the library really early on in the year and loved it. You had read it last year. Well, now this is posting in 2024. So you read it 2022. We're actually filming this on New Year's Eve just to make it super confusing. And you loved it. So I put it on my list and eventually got to it. We watched the movie with Anne Bancroft before I read it. And she's so perfectly cast.
So great.
It's so good. So we went on a journey throughout the first half of 2023 because I really wanted a copy of the book for our library. And I was really hoping to track down a used copy because it's about used copies of books. If you're unfamiliar, basically it's letters that were sent between Helene Hanff and employees of a bookstore in London starting in the late 1940s, like before Queen Elizabeth was coronated, because that happens in the course of their letters. And they strike up a remarkable friendship. And it's about basically being a good human and the connections that you can forge even with people that you haven't met before. It's really beautiful. It's only small. And we did find this copy, which I love because it has the introduction by Anne Bancroft. And then Marcia Johansson, who is a subscriber, sent me a copy of the book as well. So now I have 2, and it's a delightful book.
And I do love that cover, but it's nice to have a kind of almost one of the original styles that they came out with, and with the forward from Anne Bancroft. Great story.
Really good. I would highly recommend it. And just as a shout out, this did not make my list of best, but I did also read The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street by Helene Hanff, which is sort of a sequel. It's basically diary entries that she kept when she was able to finally go to London. So after 84 Charing Cross Road was published and became a success, the rights were sold to a publisher in the UK, and they invited her out to London for the release of the book. And one of the whole things about 84 Charing Cross Road is how much she wants to go to London. So this is where she finally gets to go. So I don't think it's as good as 84 Charing Cross Road, but there's an emotional resolution to this one that there is an emotional resolution in this, but this feels like a perfect encapsulation of the journey. So just wanted to shout that out and mention it here.
It's a great companion book. If you read one, they both are very good.
Yeah.
So.
Like 84 Charing Cross Road is better, but there's catharsis to be found in Duchess of Bloomsbury Street. All right, we're up to number 2.
Number two. Mine was it August? August, I read all books about elephants.
Yes.
And I really had a great month, and I loved it. Yeah. One of the books I read was The Elephant in the Garden. Now, this may not be fully nonfiction, but it's all true. A couple of things they did change to kind of make it into a story. But it was in World War I. The German village was going to get bombed. So this woman who worked at the zoo says they're going to kill all the animals because if they bomb the village and the animals get out, that's more dangerous than anything. Lions and tigers running amok.
Oh my.
Amok. So she goes, I'm going to take the elephant home. And so she takes the elephant home, puts the elephant in the garden. It becomes, the village is bombed, and she takes her family and the elephant, and they try to get to another country just to get away from the bombings. Beautiful story. Really good knowledge on elephants. And it was really a kind of a tearjerker a little bit in some places.
Yeah.
Happy ending, I'm going to say that. But it was absolutely a beautiful book.
And you did read a strictly nonfiction version of that same story. but I know you preferred this fictionalized version of it, which, by the way, has a beautiful cover.
Yes. It's a very gorgeous cover.
Yeah, for sure. So.
And both of the stories are really good. They just kind of pretty this up. So that was mine. Elephant in the Garden was a great book.
Yeah. My number 2 was actually in my number 1 slot for most of the year, because this was one of the first books that I read in 2023, The Inland Island by Josephine Johnson. Now, if you follow along, you know, I read Now in November by Josephine Johnson as part of my Pulitzer Prize project, where I am reading all of the books that have won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. And I was really curious about other books of hers, because part of the story in the deep dive that I'll have linked down below is that she sort of disappeared from publishing for a long time, and sort of an examination of why that happened. And I read a book called Seven Houses that is supposed to be a memoir, but she never wrote a strict memoir. Seven Houses is a memoir in houses, places that she lived and what was going on in her life at the time. But she doesn't really give a lot away. And I became very curious about The Inland Island, which is one of these sort of early nature books. Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. It was published in around that same time. So I got it from the library, and I loved it so much I had to track down a copy. But I really wanted to track down the same copy that I got from the library, because it is beautiful. And actually, the one from the library didn't have the dust jacket, and this one does. It came in absolutely beautiful condition. I'm going to very carefully pull back the dust jacket for a second, because this is what the library book looked like. That beautiful cloth covered hardcover with embroidery on it. It's just really stunning. And what this is so she married, had kids. They moved to, I think it's Ohio. And over time, they looked at their yard and they decided to sort of let the yard run wild and just let nature do its thing. And over the years, they loved observing what nature did with their property. And The Inland Island, every chapter is 1 month on the property, where she observes the changes in nature, the animals who appear or disappear. And it also is a bit of a memoir. There's actually more about her writing career in here than there is in Seven Houses, which is supposed to be more strict of a memoir. She's still a little vague about all of that, but it's absolutely stunningly beautiful and wonderful. I had never read a book that made me want to go out and observe nature before, and this one did it. So here is the title page. Gorgeous. And someone commented to say that they had gotten a copy of The Inland Island after I talked about it, and they actually read 1 chapter a month. So in January, they read January.
Which I'm thinking about doing, because I think that's kind of a fun way of doing it, because you're in that season.
I really loved that idea, and I kind of wish I had thought about it, but I would not have had the patience to do it, so it would have been a disaster. But it's just a really beautiful book. So let's go. That's February. That's your birthday month. Let's see if I can find June really quickly. And there it is. A man.
Ooh.
So beautiful book. I absolutely loved it. I would recommend it. This was actually just recently reissued alongside Now in November. There's a beautiful paperback edition of it. That will be the one that's affiliate linked down below. So it is available out there. I would definitely recommend it to you. I'm hoping that more people will discover Josephine Johnson, because that is a beautiful, beautiful book. What is your number 1 nonfiction book?
Number 1 is Modoc by Ralph Helfer, and it is the true story of the greatest elephant that ever lived. God, I loved this book.
That, I would say, is probably, if we had lumped nonfiction and fiction together, that would have been
it's up there.
Yeah.
So I think in the top 10, if we lumped it all together.
Yeah.
I love this book. It is about an elephant trainer who trains elephants, and on the day the elephant gave birth to this elephant, his wife gave birth to his son. So the son and elephant were born on the same day. They grow up together, and then they train the boy to be an elephant trainer, and he names him Modoc. And so the boy trains Modoc. Well, Modoc is going to get taken away from the father because the circus is closing down. So the boy goes and kidnaps Modoc, and they go on this incredible journey across the Asian country, a little bit in Europe. And what they did, it almost seems almost a little unbelievable, just everything they did.
When you were telling me about it, I kept asking, like, and this is nonfiction? So,
Yeah. And he ends up in the United States, and Modoc is put on circus with the Barnum and Bailey Circus. There's a kind of a funny story I'll tell you towards the end on this. So he's with the Barnum and Bailey Circus, and then the circus kind of has a little drought. So they sell the elephant to a trainer who abuses him. And it's really hard to read when you do have such a love for these beautiful creatures that are just amazingly smart and compassionate and just great creatures. So they get him away from this abusive, and finally gets into a home that bought Barnum and Bailey, and it's kind of retirement. So he spends his retirement in this little farm down in Florida, taking care of elephants and everything. So it's almost the entire journey of Modoc's life.
yeah.
And it's just a beautiful story. So, kind of fun fact here. So I was reading the book, and the elephant is down in Florida at a Barnum and Bailey circus. Well, I was talking to my brother about this, and I was talking to him about some books I've been reading, and he goes, "Yeah, I saw an elephant once. It's down in Florida. It was an old Barnum and Bailey circus that had closed down in kind of retirement. So it's become a sanctuary for elephants." So my brother has been to the sanctuary Modoc goes to. I don't think he met Modoc, though.
Probably not,
No.
I imagine, based on timing. But, and somebody did ask, like, when you first read this book, they kind of asked, does the elephant die? And, I mean, the thing is, this is set, early 1900s?
Yeah, early 1900s. And,
Yeah.
I mean, not a spoiler. I mean, animals do pass, but
Yeah.
he was very old. He had a very good life. He ran into some hard times, but the elephant kept its spirit. And that's another thing I loved about this book. The elephant keeps his spirit no matter where he's been and how much he's been beaten down. He keeps his spirit.
Yeah, that is beautiful.
Great book. I love
I
this
would
book.
love to read it someday. I need to get into a place where I can, because a lot of the abuse part that you talked about
Yeah.
sounded very upsetting. So I need to get to a place where I can manage that.
But he overcomes a lot of it.
Yeah, which is beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
I think Teddy might be joining us for my final book. Hold on. Let's see if we can get him.
Come on, bud.
Okay, here's
Hi.
Teddy.
Hi.
Here's Teddy, here for the final book, which is Of Time and Turtles by Cy Montgomery. For basically all the reasons you already talked about, but I think this, to me, felt like a really restorative book. You know, the last 2 years have been difficult. I mean, the last 3 years since the pandemic have been difficult for a lot of people, but for us in particular. Yeah. And this book had helped mend my shell in a way. It helped me process a lot of the grief that I've been feeling about the 2 dogs we lost and other things that have happened in the world, and get me ready for 2024. Like, I feel like I'm going into 2024 with fresh emotions, a clean slate, which is probably a good thing because I imagine 2024 is going to be a disaster or super stressful with the presidential election and everything here in the United States. But I just had such a powerful response to this book, and it does deal with grief because there are instances where they lose turtles, and Cy Montgomery reflects on life and what life means and the things you leave behind, and it's truly beautiful. I talked in our best books of 2023 a little bit. We talked about how The Secret Life of Albert Entwistle helped cure a lot from us in 2022. And The Guncle by Stephen Rowley helped cure me a lot of grief and things that I was feeling stuck with. And this is another book in that sort of set, but a nonfiction version of it. Yeah. And it's another really stunningly gorgeous book.
So you top and bottom.
Yeah. And there are beautiful illustrations done by, what's his name, Matt
Patterson.
Matt Patterson throughout. And he is actually with Cy on this journey in the book. And there are wonderful photos of it. We need to get Teddy to meet a turtle someday.
Yeah.
I think he would love it. He might. No, I don't think he would try to eat a turtle.
No. So there's Matt with one of the turtles.
Yeah.
And that's Fire Chief. Fire Chief's story is probably one of my favorites in here.
Yeah.
He's just a really big old turtle that kind of goes through a lot. They
Yeah.
talk about how they lay their eggs and survive.
Yeah.
And although this was lower on my list, it doesn't take away how much I love this book.
Yeah. Just a very good book.
Yeah.
Very, very, very good book. It has me much more excited to read more Simon Montgomery in the future. We also loved The Soul of an Octopus. Such a good book.
Yeah.
And she does have a lot of other books out there. She does a lot of books for children. Like there is a children's version of Time and Turtles?
Yes.
Yeah, which we bought for our niece.
Kind of our niece.
Yeah,
our niece.
Yeah.
And Matt does the illustrations, and they're just gorgeous illustrations.
Yeah, and there's a children's version of How to Be a Good Human as well.
I got that for her too.
Yeah. So, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book. And those are our favorite nonfiction reads of 2023. Let us know what yours are in the comments down below. Let us know if you have recommendations based on any of this, or thoughts, anything in the comment section down below. Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been fun.
It's been a good year.
Yeah, it has. Looking forward to 2024. Happy New Year. And as always, we really appreciate your time. We will be back. Until next time, happy reading.